I've not spoken on this channel before ever, but well, hopefully I'm going to create a very just amazing and excellent video, which is not going to happen. Anyway, today we're going to take a look at the scenario as what if the British Empire returned, or not returned, but never collapsed. So it's going to be quite a lot of unrest in places like the Middle East. Africa wants its independence, and India does want it peacefully. And the problem is that China wants more influence down in Southeast Asia. But Canada, New Zealand, and Australia are quite keen to stay because it's to their benefit. South Africa doesn't really mind either. So we're going to look at one of the first things happening is a rebellion in the Middle East. This rebellion starts here and gains quite a few supporters around this area. A lot of the population probably is. I don't know. Starts to expand out, and people find out about it rapidly and start joining it before a response is fully mobilized. And there's just a lot of countries joining it, or people joining it. It's becoming a very popular idea until a majority of the country has come to this rebellion. So Britain will finally mobilize its forces and it will move in to the rebellious territory. It slams its forces into Iraq, and they start making their way towards the centre where the rebellion started there. And they're making good progress. But in the more outskirty bits, the rebellion will continue to take hold and gain large amounts of territory. Of course, going to be doing kind of guerrilla warfare tactics, even though Britain did have some like operations going on, just turning up the trains like here, you know, because they controlled it. These guys on the train much better because the local people rebelling. And these rebellion and the rebellion actually kind of goes into this small part down there. So Britain will attack will eventually go to a halt as the any militia are able to organise themselves, and kind of stalls out, and a small offence is made down here to try to cut off the rebels down here, and the British forces do manage to push into here though, and fully. But this country has had a lot of special forces down here, and the militia weren't very organised. So that's what's happening in the Middle East right now. Africa also really wants independence. So China wants influence in Southeast Asia. So they'll start to send people, supplies, and information into this part of the country here, of this Indian country, into Myanmar, stuff like that. They'll start sending something to there, and it's kind of obvious that they're doing it. They're just trying to make it so people can't really blame them. Not being very open about it. China is not openly saying they're doing that, and yeah. So there will be some stuff happening in this country that will cause some unrest. More importantly, this over here is an Islamic country. Pakistan is also an Islamic country, but it's joined to India, which is a Hindu country. Pakistan doesn't really like that's going on, and India doesn't really care, so they're not very happy about that. So a similar kind of rebellion will start in Pakistan, and they're going to be fighting India. Yes, there we are. A similar sort of rebellion starts here, and it's growing quite big. And gonna fill in a whole bunch of this land, and especially in rural areas where there aren't really many like British officers or anything like that keeping everything in control. They're just going to start take over land quite rapidly. So there's chaos all across the empire, really. So rebellions in 2 countries, and this rebellion expands, especially in the east. Ooh, not there. Especially in the east, close to the Middle East. It will expand quite a bit and gain quite a few supporters. But India, even though it wants independence, just kind of want to crush this rebellion, and under British instruction starts to invade into Pakistan, this Pakistan area. Go along the coast quite efficiently. Do get some heavy resistance since it's quite a supportive area of the Pakistan kind of thing that's going on. They start to set up their own government in the process of doing that, but quite heavy gains made against Pakistan by India, where they start sending in their forces. Meanwhile, over in Iraq, stuff's not going so well for Britain anymore. They're getting ambushed and taken out by guerrilla troops. In this land, they are starting to push back here. They are getting supplies. These guys aren't really supplied very well because, you know, they're just rebels. But they can make do. And Britain also starts to launch forces in from there, but they are still going to take some losses from militia forces here. And there's a continued assault through here. They are pushed back slightly because the rebellion started to organise its forces around here. This weird sort of front line thing, trying to link it with the water. They start trying to push into the desert up here, but it's not going particularly well, and they are eventually pushed back. There's a small counter-offensive there. From this point, they do manage to launch up a offensive around here. They capture this lake and make their way up here, some less important areas, and they will slowly, using this fast paramilitary, start to grind back through the harsh desert terrain. Eventually start to encircle around, and they're pushing in on all sides, and there's not really much the rebels can do. They're being pushed around from all sides, and they're eventually captured. And this bit starts to fall back up to the north, and they try to help, but they really do much, and then they get pushed back there, and this just slowly gets whittled down until they surrender. Before they surrender, some fighting continues on, and Britain starts to push up. They push back a bit, needs to push up, they reallocate their forces, and then they surrender. Now that region is heavily destabilized. It's really destabilized. So it's not a great place to be in right now. Now, we continue with India versus Pakistan. Now, the troops that are held up there by Britain are going to go all the way down here, around here. Iran's not very fond of this happening near them, but what can they really do about it? They can't really do much about it, because it's one of the strongest countries in the world they would be interfering with, and well, they really don't want to do that. So India continues to push forces in here, making multiple spearheads. Pakistan does start to switch to the north, and people are, the Islamic religion are actually helping Pakistan up in the north. It's not really putting up much of a fight. The defensive line is formed here. And they start slowly pushing along, and the defensive line is formed by India there. There's not as much support here though. In kind of the centre, most of the eastern bits in the north. So it's more for the rebellion. These parts in the centre start to not do very well. Germans, the local leaders aren't really pushing it as much. Of course, volunteer troops from these areas are coming in, especially Afghanistan. So they will eventually get pushed back. They're just volunteer troops. Afghanistan's not openly declaring war there. So, yeah, troops flood in. Yeah, but India has a large population. So does Pakistan, but India's just so much bigger. So I would get a lot of conscripts in, and the front looks a bit like that. It's about now that China springs their trap, and well, it's not looking too amazing down here. A rebellion here occurs. A large portion being heavily influenced by China in recent times. Even it's quite a bit later. It's been a couple of years now since the beginning. A few years, like 2 or 3. And China already been trying to get influence in this region to expand its goals in Southeast Asia. And India doesn't really know what to do with this, so they just send a few troops in, or they're unorganized and rebelling, and they try to make like a front line along here. And there are a few troops stationed down here that are starting to invade in, but the majority of their forces is here, and it's just gonna try to push in a bit and hold them back while they're fighting a two-front war, which is never good. Britain started to get a bit worried, so they start sending in troops from the rest of the empire. So Britain's not very happy it's fighting a two-front war, so it starts calling for a force for Africa. And some people may force them to go. Britain's not openly forcing them to go, but the local officers are, so people aren't very happy about that in Africa. And they are still doing okay against Pakistan now, but it's a bit of a revival with some Asian troops from especially this region, to be honest. Especially like theirs and the troops going from near the borders, especially there. But yeah, India's still pushing in. On the bottom there, they start to focus on their forces from here to catch some of these regions down here, and they finally start doing a decent job and start doing okay. It's Britain calls in more troops. A lot of them are sent down here to help push up against here, and they do a decent job. And against these rebels, they're not doing amazingly, and China's not openly supporting them either. They're not sending in troops or anything, because that would be a direct attack on the British Empire, which wouldn't be amazing. We don't want a war that big. And also keep my nukes wouldn't be amazing, because nukes still do exist, in real life, so that would be very good. They won't be used probably. So now we're going to go on to other parts of the world. As the war continues on, dragging more and more supplies from Britain, parts of Africa start to experience unrest, and multiple revolts start to happen as more and more money is taken out of these areas to finance the war going on in India. It's a very important war as it's the crown jewel of the empire. So these aren't all the same rebellion. I'm just gonna colour them the same. Just notify an African rebellion, they're not all really on the same side, just so I don't want to run out of colours. There's multiple rebellions in Africa, all across. Ends up looking something like that, and this rebellion starts approaching here, which is that's down this strait here, which isn't very, it's not really good for the rest of British Africa, because they won't be able to get to it through here, and it's also dangerous to Egypt, which is a reasonably big economy. So Britain's not too happy about that, and yeah, it doesn't seem it's going to be going very well for the British Empire, unfortunately. There's too many independence movements going on at once. Anyway, speaking of that, Ireland has always wanted its independence, and I suppose we should be granting it because they're against the war, because they haven't had some of their men drafted in. So Britain doesn't really use conscription, but some officers haven't really been following orders. So yeah, there's a lot of Ireland rebels all of a sudden at once. A lot of Ireland all of a sudden rebels. Actually, we'll make it so it's just like that. Britain means control that tip there, and all of a sudden we recall huge reinforcements back here to stop the rebellion. So forced to call out of India across Africa to stop the Irish rebellion. People look down upon the world, from the world, and see this kind of oppression, and they won't really like Britain for this, and they'll urge them to let Ireland go at least. Let Ireland go. Some of the colonial countries won't, like France doesn't really mind, and Russia's always going to criticise them no matter what, because they're kind of enemies. They do not like them. But yeah, the world's going to try, pleaded Britain to let them go, and Britain does remain in control over this area, but might not for too long. The rebellions in Africa continue, and they get significantly larger, and they start to expand a lot more, and they start to meet up, even though they're not really the same rebellions. I'll draw it up later. They're kind of different countries, but they're kind of trying to revolt from Britain. So just gonna have it like that. Just gonna say the same colour for now. All of there ends up being part of the rebellion, and all of that down there. This war was very expensive recently, and it's starting to cost quite a lot of money. It's across here, cuts them off from here. It's not going swimmingly, at all. India's still starting to make gains against Pakistan. Northern Front's finally weakened, so they are starting to move in. But India's pretty much just fighting this on its own now. Pakistan is starting to wear out there because they weren't very organised. At first, it took them a while to get organised, and then they already been kind of drained of supplies at that time, and they start to push through the centre again, trying to cut the country in half to make it disorganised, which they eventually do. And Thailand barely gets pushed back because they don't really want to send supplies or men over there as much. They're not really. It's not really a main priority. It's not a huge threat. So the front kind of just stays like that. The African rebellions are becoming quite a large threat, and Britain can't really get as many supplies down here as they used to because they can't really stop off in places like down here, down there, or anywhere along this bit. It's kind of annoying to stop off at, so they're gonna have to just keep going. It's just they can't get as many supplies or manpower through. And Britain can't really fight the war down Africa, so they agreed to give them peace. They do agree peace. Some Egyptian divisions do try to push them back, however, as peace is being reached, and then peace is reached, and they end like this for the front in Africa. So this is what the borders end up looking like. Oh, not like that though. So the place the rebellion originally started, we'll get that colour. The other rebellion, a Southern rebellion. Now this is a point of interest for Britain, because Britain doesn't really want to lose this. Since they did push them out of Egypt, they are but actually, yeah, they get it back. So fill all that in the board like that, and then they decide what to do. So these guys all rebelled along the Nile. Britain wants to keep this, but the rebellion kind of started down here. It's kind of important land. So they decide to end up doing something like part of Egypt. Egypt now looks like that. This is still part of Sudan though. So it ends up looking like. So we still got to keep a lot of land in Africa. The parts of the continent didn't really rebel. And that is what the episode should end with the war still ongoing. So they will end up like this. There's a war still ongoing in India, and there's still a bit of unrest in Africa, and the world's kind of angry at Britain for what they did to Ireland. Maybe something will come of that. We'll see. Goodbye.